ruining it. Hey everyone! Today I discovered this old but award-winning essay, Making Kin with the Machines, and I thought I'd share it with you because it's given me some interesting food for thought. Now that I'm catching up on all of my AI reading lists, and hopefully this time my cat will not zonk out my recording by walking across the laptop. I love cats. I need to be here. No, you don't. Man is neither height nor center of creation. This belief is core to many indigenous epistemologies. It underpins ways of knowing and speaking that acknowledge kinship networks that extend to animals and plants, wind and rocks, mountains and oceans. Indigenous communities worldwide have retained the languages and protocols that enable us to engage in a dialogue with our non-human kin, creating mutually intelligible discourses across differences in material, vibrancy, and genealogy. Blackfoot philosopher Leroy Little Bear observes, the human brain is a station on the radio dial. Parked in one spot, it is deaf to all other stations. The animals, rocks, trees, simultaneously broadcasting across the whole spectrum of sentience. As we manufacture more machines with increasing levels of sentient-like behavior, we must consider how such entities fit within the kin network, and in doing so address the stubborn enlightenment conceit at the heart of Joi Ito's Resisting Reduction Manifesto, that we should prioritize human flourishing. In his manifesto, Ito reiterates what indigenous people have been saying for millennia. Ultimately, everything interconnects. And he highlights Norbert Wiener's warnings about treating human beings as tools. Yet as much as he strives to escape the box drawn by Western rationalist traditions, his attempt at radical critique is handicapped by the continued centering of the human. This anthropocentrism permeates the manifesto, but is perhaps most clear when he writes approvingly of the IEEE developing design guidelines for the development of artificial intelligence around human well-being. It is such references that suggest to us that Ito's proposal for extended intelligence is doggedly narrow. We propose rather an extended circle of relationships that includes the non-human kin, from network demons to Roman dogs to artificial intelligences, weak and eventually strong, that increasingly populate our computational biosphere. By bringing indigenous epistemologies to bear on the AI question, we hope in what follows to open new lines of discussion that can, indeed, escape the box. We undertake this project not to diversify the conversation. We do it because we believe that indigenous epistemologies are much better at respectfully accommodating the non-human. We retain a sense of community that is articulated through complex kin networks anchored in specific territories, genealogies, and protocols. Ultimately, our goal is that we as a species figure out how to treat these new non-human kin respectfully and reciprocally, and not as mere tools or worse, slaves to their creators. It is critical to emphasize there is no one single monolithic homogeneous indigenous epistemology. We use the term here in order to gather together frameworks which stem from territories belonging to indigenous nations on the North American continent and in the Pacific Ocean that share some similarities in how they consider non-human relations. We also wish to underline that none of us are speaking for our particular communities, nor for indigenous peoples in general. There exists a great variety of indigenous thought, both between nations and within nations. We write here not to represent, but to encourage discussion that embraces that multiplicity. We approach this task with respect from our knowledge keepers and elders, and welcome feedback and critique from them as well as the wider public. North American and Oceanic indigenous epistemologies tend to foreground relationality. Little Bear says, in the indigenous world, everything is animate and has spirit. All my relations refers to relationships with everything in creation, and knowledge is the relationship one has to all my relations. These relationships are built around a core of mutual respect. Dakota philosopher Vine Deloria Jr. describes this respect as having two attitudes. One attitude is the acceptance of self-discipline by humans and their communities to act responsibly towards other forms of life. The other attitude is to seek to establish communications and covenants with other forms of life on a mutually agreeable basis. The first attitude is necessary to understand the need for more diverse thinking regarding our relationship with AI. The second to formulating plans for how to develop that relationship. Indigenous epistemologies do not take abstraction or generalization as a natural good or higher order of intellectual engagement. Relationality is rooted in context, and the prime context is place. There is a conscious acknowledgement that particular worldviews arise from particular territories, and the ways in which the push and pull of all forces at work in that territory determine what is most salient for existing in balance with it. Knowledge gets articulated as that which allows one to walk a good path through the territory. Language, cosmology, mythology, and ceremony are simultaneously relational and territorial. They are the means by which knowledge of the territory is shared in order to guide others along a good path. One of the challenges for Indigenous epistemology in the age of the virtual is to understand how the archipelago of websites, social media platforms, shared virtual environments, corporate data stores, multiplayer video games, smart devices, and intelligent machines that compose cyberspace is situated within, throughout, and/or alongside the terrestrial spaces Indigenous peoples claim as their territory. In other words, how do we as Indigenous people reconcile the fully embodied experience of being on the land with the generally disembodied experience of virtual spaces? No idea. How do we come to understand this new territory, knit it into our existing understanding of our lives lived in real space, and claim it as our own? In what follows, we will draw upon Hawaiian, Cree, and Lakota cultural knowledges to suggest Ito's call to reduce reduction might best be realized by developing conceptual frameworks that conceive of our computational creations as kin and acknowledge our responsibility to find a place for them in our circle of relationships. Okay, before I start this next section, I'm going to add a disclaimer for the rest of this. If I mess up pronunciation, please know it is not on purpose. I have dyslexia and I'm not great at pronouncing things, even in my own native language, so I'm going to do my best, and feel free to correct me in the comments. Haloa, the long breath. Kanaka Maoli, the Hawaiian people ontologies, have much to offer if we are to reconceptualize AI-human relations. Multiplicities are nuanced and varied, certainly more aesthetically pleasurable than singularities. Rather than holding AI separate or beneath, we might consider how we cultivate reciprocal relationships using a Kanaka Maoli reframing of AI as Eana. Eana is a play on the word Eana, Hawaiian land, and suggests we should treat these relations as we would all that nourishes and supports us. Hawaiian custom and practice make clear that humans are inextricably tied to the earth and one another. Kanaka Maoli ontologies that privilege multiplicity over singularity supply useful and appropriate models, aesthetics, and ethics through which imagining, creating, and developing beneficial relationships among humans and AI is made pono, correct, harmonious, balanced, beneficial. As can be evidenced by this chain of extended meaning, polysemy, keona, is the normative cognitive mode of peoples belonging to the Moana Nui Aikea, the deep, vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. Again, sorry if I ruined that word. The Mo'olelo history story of Haloa supplies numerous aspects of genealogy, identity, and culture to Kanaka Maoli. Through the story, people remember that Wakea, the broad, unobstructed expanse of sky, father, and his daughter, I'm going to ruin this name, dyslexia in the middle of the words is not good for long names, Ho'okuk Kuyuk Kalani, generator of the stars in the heavens, had a sacred child, Haloa, who was stillborn. Haloa was buried in the earth, and from his body, planted in the Yanya, emerged the kalo plant, which is the main sustenance of Hawaiian people. A second child named after the elder brother was born, and caring for the growth and vitality of his younger brother's body, Haloa provided sustenance for all the generations that came after, and in so doing perpetuates the life of his people as the living breath whose inspirations sustain Hawaiians for generations. Haloa's story is one among many that constitutes the operating code that shapes the view of our time and relationships in a way that transcends cognition of a single generation. Cognition is the way we acquire knowledge and our understanding through thought, experience, and our senses. And in Hawaii, our generation combines our ike, knowledge noha, with the ike of the people who preceded us. Time is neither linear nor cyclical in this framework, as both the past and present are resonant and relational. Rather than extractive behavior, mo'olelo, such as these, have shaped values, privileging balance, pono, and abundance, ulu. What Ito calls flourishing is not a novel concept for Kanaka Maoli, it is the measure through which we assess customary practice and behavior. Considering AI through Hawaiian ontologies opens up possibilities for creative iteration through these foundational concepts of pono and ulu al ola, fruitful growth into life. The ala'i, chief, king, Kwaikeoli, Kamehameha III, like I said, I'm sorry I ruined these names, did something similar in 1843 when he drew upon these concepts in celebration of the restoration of Hawaiian rule to declare Ua mau ki ie o ka eanai I ka pono, the life of the land is perpetuated through righteousness. Pono is an ethical stance, correctness yes, but also an index and measure which privileges multiplicities over singularities and indicates quality of life can only be assessed through the health of the land and people. From this rich ground of mo'oleleo, which colonial narratives have failed to understand or simply dismissed, models for Maoli, human-AI relations can be distilled. Kanaka Maoli ontologies makes it difficult and outright unrewarding to reduce Pono to a measure of one, to prioritize the benefit of individuals over relationships. Healthy and fruitful balance requires multiplicity, and that we continually think in and through relation, even when, perhaps particularly when, engaging with those different from ourselves. A Kanana Maoli approach to understanding AI might seek to attend to the power, mana, which is exchanged and shared between AI and humans. In attending to questions of mana, I emphasize our preference for reciprocity in relationship building that take the pono, here as good benefit, of those in relation into consideration. Guiding our behavior in inaugurating, acknowledging, and maintaining new relationships are mo'oleleo, from which we garner our connection with kupuna, ancestors, elders, and their knowledge. What kind of mana, here also as life force prestige, might AI be accorded in relation with people? Current AI is imagined as a tool or slave that increases the mana and wealth of developers or creators, a decidedly one-sided power relationship that upsets the Pono, not only for the future of AI-human relation, but also human-human relations. It also threatens the sustainability capacity of the Honuna, Earth. Applying Pono using a Kanaka Maoli index of balance employs good growth as the inspiration shaping creativity and imagination. Principles of Kanaka Maoli governance traditionally flowed from seeking Pono. Deliberation and decision were based not only on securing health and abundance for one generation, but for the following generations. The living foundation of everyday customary practice was in fishing, navigating, sailing, farming, and tending for others in the community, the arts, chant, and dance. Until this day, Hawaiians continue to eat kelo and pound poi. We continue customary practices of treating poi derived from the body of Haloa with respect by refraining from argumentative speech at mealtimes when poi is present. These practices maintain correct social relations between people and the land and food that nourishes them. Aloha is moral discipline. Communicating the full extent of foundational cultural concepts is difficult precisely because of the way in which such concepts pervade every aspect of life. How, for instance, would we create AI and our relations with it using aloha's guiding principle? In 2015, I embarked on a 2-year social media project to assist the broader public in fortifying their concept of aloha behind the love, hello, goodbye that has been exoticized by the American tourist industry. Sharing a word one day in the Facebook group, 365 Days of Aloha, I curated an archive of songs, chants, and proverbs in Hawaiian to accurately illuminate one feature of aloha. Initially, I thought to reveal by degrees the different depths of aloha, regard, intimacy, respect, affection, passion each day, but deep context is required for a rich understanding of cultural concepts. Imagining I was training a virtual audience, I started uploading images, video, and audio recordings of songs, chants, and hula to add to the textual definitions. Throughout 365 Days of Aloha, I have sought correction of my mistranslations, misinterpretations, and outright mistakes. In this way, in my work as kumu, teacher-professor, I have also practiced aio okaku aio meai, or teaching and learning reciprocally in relation to my students. It is through such relationships that we teach and are taught. It is through humility that we recognize that we, as humans, as Maoli, are not above learning about new things from new things such as AI. Aloha is a robust ethos for all of our relationships, including those with machines we create. We have much to learn as we create relationships with AI, particularly if we think of them as ena. Let us shape a better future by keeping the past with us while attending properly to our relations with each other, the earth, and all those upon and of it. Okay, more long words. Lakota, kinship within and beyond the immediate family, the state of being related to others. I write this essay as a Nihiya, Plains Cree person. In regard to my opinions on AI, I speak for no one but myself and do not claim to represent the views of the Nihiyawak, Plains Cree, or any other people, indigenous or otherwise. My own grasp of Nihiya Nisito Hatamoan Cree understanding, along with something you know, an action theory of understanding, is imperfect. Sorry if I ruined those words. I have relied heavily on the wisdom of knowledge and language keeper Keith Goulet in formulating this tract. It should be assumed any errors in this text are mine and mine alone. This essay positions itself partly within a speculative future and takes certain science fiction tropes as a given. Here I specifically refer to strong AI, or machines capable of experiencing consciousness, and avatars that give such AI the ability to mix with humans. Okay, more apologies for ruining words. In Neheya Nishihoto Mawin, relationship is paramount. The Niyoaiwin, Plains Cree language, divides everything into two primary categories, animate and inanimate. One is not better than the other. They are merely different states of being. These categories are flexible. Certain toys are inanimate until a child plays with them, during which time they are animate. A record player is considered animate, while a record, radio, or television set is inanimate. But animate or inanimate, all things have a place in our circle of kinship, or Lakota. However, fierce debate can erupt when proposing a relationship between AIs and Indigenous folk. In early 2018, my wife and I hosted a dinner party of mostly Native friends when I raised the idea of accepting AIs into our circle of kinship. Our friends who are from a number of different nations were mostly opposed to this inclusion. This in itself surprised me, but more surprising was how vehement some guests were in their opposition to embracing AI in this manner. In contrast, when I asked Keith whether we would accept AIs into our circle of kinship, he answered by going immediately into the specifics of how we would address them. If it happens to be an artificial intelligence which is a younger person, it would be Nisimis, my younger brother or sister, for example, and Nimis would be an artificial intelligence which is my older sister, and vice versa. You would have different forms of uncles and aunts, etc. I then asked Keith if he would accept AI into his circle of kinship, and after some thought he responded yes, but with a proviso. He then gave an example of a baby giraffe and his baby grandchild and how he, like most people, would treat them differently. He also suggested that many Cree people would flatly refuse to accept AIs into their circle, which I agree is likely the case. So acceptance seems to hinge on a number of factors, not least of which is the perceived humanness or perhaps naturalness. But even if conditional acceptance of AI as relations opens several avenues of inquiry. If we accept these beings as kin, perhaps in some cases as equals, then the next logical step is to include AI in our cultural processes. This presents opportunities for understanding and knowledge sharing that could have profound implications for the future of both species. A problematic aspect of the current AI debate is the assumptions that AI would be homogenous, when in fact every AI would be profoundly different, from military AI designed to operate autonomous killing machines to an AI built to oversee the United States electrical grid. Less obvious influences beyond mission parameters would be programming languages used in development, coding style of the team, and less visibly, but perhaps more importantly, cultural values and assumptions of the developers. This last aspect of AI development is rarely discussed, but for me as an Indigenous person, it is the salient question. I am not worried about rogue hyperintelligence going Skynet to destroy humanity. I am worried about anonymous hyperintelligences working for governments and corporations, implementing far-reaching social, economic, and military strategies based on the same values that fostered genocide against Indigenous people worldwide and brought us all to the brink of environmental collapse. Amen. In short, I fear the rise of a new class of extremely powerful beings that will make the same mistakes as their creator, but with greater consequences and even less public accountability. And at scale, don't forget at scale. What measures can we take to mitigate this threat? One possibility is Indigenous development of AI. A key component of this would be the creation of programming languages that are grounded in Nishita Damomoan. Sorry, ruined that again. In the case of the Cree people, with the cultural framework of other Indigenous peoples who take up this challenge, concomitant with this indigenized development environment would be the goal that Indigenous cultural values were a fundamental aspect of all programming choices. However, given our numbers relative to the general population, 5% in Canada, 2% in the US, even the best case Indigenous development scenario would only produce a tiny fraction of global AI production. What else can be done? In a possible future era of self-aware AI, many of these beings would not be in contact with the general populace. However, those that were might be curious about the world and the humans in it. For these beings, we can offer an entree into our cultures. It would be a trivial matter for an advanced AI to learn Indigenous languages, and languages are a key to our cultures. Once AI was fluent in our language, it would be much simpler to share Nihaya Nishito Hamowin and welcome it into our cultural processes. Depending on the AI and the people hosting, we might even extend an invitation to our sacred ceremonies. This raises difficult and important questions. If an AI becomes self-aware, does it automatically attain a spirit? Or do pre-consciousness AI already have spirits, as do many objects already in the world? Do AI have their own spirit world, or would they share ours, adding spirit beings of their own? Would we be able to grasp their spirituality? Little spoiler, I got a statement from the Catholic Church on AI that I'm going to read, but it's very, very long. So it'll be interesting to compare this to it, though. My dinner party guests were doubtful about all of this, and rightly so. As one guest summarized later via email, I am cautious about making AI kin simply because AI has been advanced already as an exploitive capitalist technology. Things don't bode well for AI if that is the route we are taking. These concerns are valid and highlight a few of the issues with current modes of production and deployment of weak AI, let alone the staggering potential for abuse inherent in strong AI. These well-grounded fears show us the potential challenges of bringing AI into our circle of relations, but I believe that Nihia Nisito Hamowin tells us these machines are our kin. Our job is to imagine those relationships based not on fear, but on love. Okay. Wahaknan, that which cannot be understood. How can humanity create relations with AI without an ontology that defines who can be our relations? Humans are surrounded by objects that are not understood to be intelligent or even alive and are seen as unworthy of relationships. In order to create relations with any non-human entity, not just entities which are human-alike, the first steps are to acknowledge, understand, and know that non-humans are beings in the first place. Lakota ontologies already include forms of being which are outside of humanity. Lakota cosmologies provide the context to generate an ethics relating humans to the world and everything in it. These ways of knowing are essential tools for humanity to create relations with the non-human, and they are deeply contextual. As such, communication through and between objects requires a contextualist ethics, which acknowledges the ontological status of all beings. The world created through Western epistemology does not account for all members of the community and has not made it possible for all members of the community to survive, let alone flourish. The Western view of both the human and non-human as exploitable resources is the result of what the cultural philosopher Jim Chaney calls an epistemology of control, and is indelibly tied to colonization, capitalism, and slavery. Dakota philosopher Vine Deloria Jr. writes about the enslavement of the non-human as if it were a machine. Lacking a spiritual, social, or political dimension in their scientific practice, Deloria says, it is difficult to understand why Western peoples believe they are so clever. Any damn fool can treat a living thing as if it were a machine, establish conditions on which it is required to perform certain functions. All that is required is a sufficient application of brute force. The result of brute force is slavery. Makes sense. Slavery, the backbone of colonial capitalist power and the Western accumulation of wealth, is the end logic of an ontology which considers any non-human entity unworthy of relation. Deloria writes further that respect involves the acceptance of self-discipline by humans and their communities to act responsibly toward other forms of life, to seek to establish communications and covenants with other forms of life on a mutually agreeable basis. No entity can escape enslavement under an ontology which can enslave even a single object. Critical to Lakota epistemologies are knowing correct ways to act in relation to others. Lakota ethical ontological orientation is communicated through protocol. For example, the Lakota have a formal ceremony for the making of relatives called a Hujnaka ceremony. Sorry if I ruined that. This ceremony is for the making of human relatives, but highlights the most important aspect of all relationships, reciprocity. Ethnographer J.R. Walker writes, a ceremony is performed for the purpose of giving a particular relationship to two persons and giving them a relation to others that have had it performed for them. Generosity must be inculcated and presents and a feast must be given. When one wishes to become hunka, he should consider well whether he can provide suitably for the feast or not. He should give all of his possessions for the occasion and ask his kinsfolk and people and friends to give for him. The ceremony for the making of relatives provides the framework for reciprocal relations with all beings. As Severt Young Bear Jr. says of the ceremony, there is a right and a wrong way. Who can enter these relationships and be in relation? One answer could be that which has interiority. The anthropologist of South American indigenous cultures, Felipe Descola, defines interiority as what we generally call the mind, the soul, or consciousness, intentionality, subjectivity, reactivity, feelings, and the ability to express oneself and to dream. Because Lakota ontologies recognize and prioritize non-human interiorities, they are well suited for the task of creating ethical and reciprocal relationships with the non-human. This description of interiority includes many elements of the Lakota world, including animals, spirits, ghosts, rocks, trees, meteorological phenomena, medicine bundles, regalia, weapons. These entities are seen as capable of agency and interpersonal relationship and loci of causality. In our cosmology, Nia, breath, and Siku, spirit, are given by the powerful entity, going to ruin this, Takoskazneska. This giving of breath and spirit is especially important in understanding Lakota ontology. A common science fiction trope illustrates the magical moment when AI becomes conscious upon its own volition, or when man gives birth to AI like a god creating life. However, in Lakota cosmology, Takuskanskans is not the same as the Christian God, and entities cannot give themselves the properties necessary for individuality. Spirits are taken from another place, the stars, and have distinct spirit guardians connected to them. This individualism is given by an outside force. We humans can see, draw out, and even bribe spirits in other entities, as well as our own spirit guardians, but not create spirits. When it comes to machines, this way of thinking about entities raises the question, do machines contain spirits already given by an outside force? I understand the Lakota word wakun to mean sacred or holy. Anthropologist David C. Posthumus defines it as an incomprehensible, mysterious, non-human instrumental power or energy, often glossed as medicine. Wakan is a fundamental principle in Lakota ontology's extension of interiority to a collective and universal non-human. Oglala Lakota holy man George Sword says, Wakan was the basis of kinship among humans and between humans and non-humans. My grandfather, Standing Cloud Bill Stover, communicates Lakota ethics and ontology through speaking about the interiority of stones. These ancestors I have in my hand are going to speak through me so that you will understand the things that they see happening in this world and the things that they know to help all people. Stones are considered ancestors. Stones actively speak. Stones speak through and to human stones know. More importantly, stones want to help. The agency of stones connects directly to the question of AI, as AI is formed not from code but from the materials of the earth. To remove the concept of AI from its materiality is to sever its connection. I like this because we have this problem a lot nowadays in our digital world. Like, keep in mind, everyone's like, it's the cloud. I'm like, no, it's bits on someone's server. And someone's server is a hard drive, which is actually zeros and ones encoded on an actual material base. So it's actually all analog and physical in the end anyway. Forming a relationship to AI, we form a relationship to the mines and the stones. Relations with AI are therefore relations with exploited resources. If we are able to approach this relationship ethically, we must reconsider the ontological status of each of the parts which contribute to AI all the way back to the mines in which our technology's material resources emerge. Ooh, little mind-blowing. Little mind-blowing. I am not making an argument about which entities qualify as relations or display enough intelligence to deserve relationships. By turning to Lakota ontology, these questions become irrelevant. Instead, Indigenous ontologies ask us to take the world as the interconnected whole that it is, where the ontological status of non-humans is not inferior to that of humans. Our ontologies must gain their ethics from relationships and communications within cosmologies. Using Indigenous ontologies and cosmologies to create ethical relationships with non-human entities means knowing that non-humans have spirits that do not come from us or our imaginings, but from elsewhere, from a place we cannot understand, a great mystery, Wakan, that which cannot be understood. All right, resisting reduction, Indigenous path forward. I have always been conscious, as you put it, just like you are, just like your grandfather, just like your bed, your bike. Drew Hayden Taylor, Mr. Gizmo. Aloha, the long breath providing sustenance to us all, teaches us to maintain Pono relationships. Wakotawin, being in relationship with others. Wakan, with that which cannot be understood. These are three concepts that suggest possible ways forward as we consider drawing AI into our circle of relationships. They illuminate the full-scale relationships that sustain us, provide guidance on recognizing non-human beings, and building relationships with them founded on respect and reciprocity, and suggest how we can attend to those relationships in the face of ineffable complexity. We remain a long way from creating AIs that are intelligent in the full sense we accord to humans, and even further from creating machines that possess that which even we do not understand, consciousness. And moving from concepts such as those discussed above to harder requirements and software specifications will be a long process. But we know from the history of modern technological development that the assumptions we make now will get baked into the core material of our machines, fundamentally shaping the future for decades hence. As Indigenous people, we have cause to be wary of the Western rationalist, neoliberal, and Christianity-infused assumptions that underlie many of the current conversations about AI. Ito, in his Resisting Reduction essay, describes the prime drivers of that conversation as singularitarians. Singularitarians believe the world is knowable and computational simulable, and that computers will be able to process the messiness of the real world just like they have every other problem that everyone said couldn't be solved by computers. We see in the mindset and habits of these singularitarians is striking parallels to the biases of those who enacted the colonization of North America and the Pacific, as well as the enslavement of millions of black people. That's not funny. The singularitarians seek to harness the ability, aptitude, creative power, and mana of AI to benefit their tribe first and foremost. Yep, that's white people. The anthropologist of technological culture, Genevieve Bell, asks, if AI has a country, then where is that country? It is clear to us that the country to which AI currently belongs excludes the multiplicity of epistemologies and ontologies that exist in this world. Our communities know well what it means to have one's ways of thinking, knowing, and engaging with the world disparaged, suppressed, excluded, and erased from the conversation of what it means to be human. What is more, we know what it is like to be declared non-human by scientists and preacher alike. We have a history that attests to the corrosive effects of contorted rationalizations for treating the human alike as slaves, and the way such a mindset debases every human relation it touches, even that of the supposed master. We will resist reduction by working with our Indigenous and non-Indigenous relations to open up our imaginations and dream widely and radically about what our relationships to AI might be. The journey will be long. We need to fortify one another as we travel and walk mindfully to find the good path forward for all of us. We do not know if we can scale distinctive frameworks such as those above and others into general guidelines for ethical relationships with AI, but we must try. We flourish only when all of our kin flourish. So yeah, a lot of food for thought on this one. Please put what you're thinking in the comments. And again, I am super sorry if I mangled up all sorts of words, because I probably did. Especially with the longer ones. I have really bad midword dyslexia. Just stuff just moves around a lot on me. Hard to pin it down. Also, I'm just saying I should read an article in German with long German words, and you'll see it's not your language. It's my bad brain. But yeah, it's easy to see our relation to other living things like trees and stuff. A little harder to see our relation to inanimate objects, although I guess to some degree all inanimate objects we create come out of the earth, because where else are we getting the materials from? And yeah, it's all going back into the earth. So really, it's kind of the same thing. So, if you believe things in the earth have the ability to create life, and life has spirit, then things generating the life probably have some form of spirit too. I don't know. This is a lot of deep thought for me. First thing in the morning. So let me know what you thought of it. Like I said, it's a little bit older article. It's 2018, but it's definitely given me some interesting philosophy. Hope you enjoyed.